Exposed, 10 spine-chilling encounters with sinister feral people in Haunted Appalachia. Vanessa felt the weight of the inky blackness close around her as she drove home from the factory, a single mother scrambling to make ends meet. The mountains loomed like ancient giants, their jagged peaks raking the sky. Each dip of the road sent a shiver through her. There were whispers in the air, strange howls that made her heart pound like a drum. The locals said the woods were alive, hiding something dreadful deep within. She could feel their eyes on her, a collective gaze promising unease. The world outside her crumbling home was a swirling mystery. The tight-knit community now seemed like a den of secrets. Neighbors she once shared cookies with wouldn't meet her gaze, their whispers turning toward her and Jeremy with a strange mixture of fear and pity. That night, with the chill creeping in, Vanessa gathered wood for the fire, each step crunching unnervingly underfoot. That's when she found the marks, the symbols carved into the trees, pulsing with a menacing energy. Her breath hitched. Each symbol echoed warnings of danger, yet she brushed it off, attributing her fears to exhaustion after long shifts. Day by day, Jeremy's innocent laughter fought the shadows creeping into their lives, but Vanessa felt the isolation deepen. Each evening, as the sun sank behind the hills, the familiar warmth of their home felt increasingly foreign. The whispers of feral people haunted her thoughts, stories of those who walked the woods, blending perfectly into the landscape like spirits. Was there truth to it? Her gut twisted as paranoia whispered goodbye to tranquility. Then came the night Jeremy called out to what he thought was a stray animal. In a heartbeat, panic gripped Vanessa. When she turned, he was gone, vanished into the thick, suffocating night. She stumbled into the heart of the forest, her feet moving faster than her mind. The howls rose around her, shrill and mocking. They echoed back her fear, wrapping her in a shroud of terror. "Jeremy," she screamed, her voice cracking through the dark. Panic roared through her chest. The shadows shifted. And as she strained her eyes, each silhouette slashed through the murk showed faces once known, friends twisted into grotesque mockeries, their eyes glinting with something feral. Was this long-lost laughter now twisted into something monstrous? Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Heart pounding, Vanessa felt cold sweat drip down her back. A chill knifed through the damp air as terror clutched her throat. The symbols, the stories, were they more than just random marks, patterns of folklore? Panic suddenly morphed into grim realization. Her community held a deeper, darker legacy. A truth intertwined with the very earth beneath her feet, lying in wait. Each step deeper into the woods pulled her closer to something monstrous blended with the familiar. Breathless and frenzied, she stumbled, visions of laughter and innocent days pressing against her mind. Would she find Jeremy? Or was she running into a nightmare that had lived among them all along? With each heartbeat echoing louder in her ears, the woods seemed to envelop her in their icy grip, and the wild beasts that lay in wait might kill what was left of her spirit. Would she emerge, or would the shadows engulf her whole? The air thickened, pressing against Vanessa like a weight she could no longer bear. Each rustle of leaves whispered promises of dread, every snap of a twig echoed in her mind. She was utterly alone, surrounded by shadows that danced mockingly. Jeremy. The desperation in her voice felt like a plea to the void. With every frantic step deeper into the woods, her heart raced faster, each pulse a countdown. The silhouettes around her morphed into the faces she once knew, friends and neighbors who now wore expressions of cruel glee. Their lips curled upwards, revealing sharp teeth that pierced the night. But were they really there? Or were they merely phantoms crafted from her growing paranoia? A howl sliced through the night, a sound so primal and raw that it made her blood run cold. It carried a warning, echoing back the same question that twisted in her mind: what were they hiding? She stumbled to a halt, her breath coming in jagged gasps as she tried to process the overwhelming swirl of fear and confusion. As she steadied herself, she noticed a flickering light deep within the woods, an orange glow flickering like a candle. Hope bloomed, pushing back the dread for just a moment. "Jeremy!" She called again, this time adding urgency to her plea. Maybe he was there, drawn in by the illusion of safety that light promised. Tuning out the wild howls that surrounded her, she forced herself toward the glow, each step dragging her deeper into the heart of the woods. The moment she reached the clearing, her stomach churned. What she saw sent chills racing down her spine. A circle of figures, hunched and cloaked in shadows, surrounded a bonfire. The flames flickered menacingly, illuminating faces twisted into grotesque masks of enjoyment, deep-set eyes glinting with animalistic delight. They held bones, smeared with dark, crusted paint. A sickening realization crept in. This was a ritual, an offering to whatever dwelled in these woods. "Jeremy!" Desperation clawed at her throat. The figures turned, their eyes fixing on her, hungry, wild. Their smiles widened. One figure stepped forward, skin taut and gaunt, like a puppeteer controlling a marionette. Vanessa's legs felt rooted to the ground. The weight of their gaze pressed down on her, she felt small, insignificant. Then she heard it, a giggle. Soft, sweet, unmistakable. Her heart surged. "Jeremy!" She spun around, nearly losing her footing as she searched the surrounding darkness. "Where are you?" "Mommy," the voice floated toward her, distant yet clear. It wrapped around her like a warm blanket, even in the face of encompassing horror. But the laughter, each echo, curled into something sinister. Among the figures, another silhouette emerged, smaller, vulnerable. With tangled hair and dirt-stained clothes, Jeremy stepped into the firelight, eyes wide with confusion. Relief surged through Vanessa, only to be crushed by the sight of his small frame lost in the crowd of shadows. The figures parted, revealing him. But he was changed, his innocent gaze now blank, a puppet strung by fear. "Mommy," he echoed, the word scratched from his throat, hollow. Fury ignited in Vanessa. "Get away from him." The moment she took a step forward, the figures shifted as one, an ominous ripple washing through them. She was no longer an observer. She was now part of whatever horror awaited. The air hummed with anticipation. The light flickered, revealing shadows that danced closer, moving with predatory intention. "Mommy," Jeremy whispered again, anxiety punctuating his small voice as the crowd pushed forward, eager for a show. In that moment of rising dread, the realization struck her with a jolt. The community she once knew had become an unspeakable nightmare, and she had stumbled unknowingly into their den. But as the figures lunged, a new voice filled the air, stronger and deeper, an ancient sound that made the ground quiver. "Stop!" it commanded, sending the figures back. Silence enveloped the clearing as they swayed uneasily, caught between their hunger and obedience, a fork in their darkened paths. Vanessa's breath caught. Was there an ally still lurking in the shadows? The figure stepped forward into the light, revealing a face she recognized from those mundane days. The blacksmith, once a man of the forge, now lost in the shadows. He extended a hand, caught between her nightmare and a fragment of hope. "Come with me," he urged. But could she trust a face that had once been familiar yet now belonged to this terrifying community? Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, blending with the whispers around her, the dark shadows encroaching. The forest loomed over them, waiting. What would she do? Would she follow him or remain trapped in the web of terror around her? As the tension mounted, Vanessa stood frozen, the weight of life-changing choices gripping her heart. But time was running out. The figures stirred, their hunger inexorably pulling them closer. Vanessa had to decide quickly, or fear would seal her fate entirely. What awaited her in the darkness? Would she unearth truths better left buried, or would she slip away forever into the night? Vanessa's mind raced, caught in a torrent of instinct and dread. The blacksmith's eyes held a flicker of humanity, but how could she be sure he was not simply another shadow, just another puppet in this nightmare? The figures surrounding her seemed to breathe as one, their excitement palpable, an electric energy coiling like a snake ready to strike. "Jeremy," she croaked, her gaze locked on her son. The sound of his name twisted in the air, a tether tying her heart to the child still lost in that sea of darkness and depravity. The blacksmith's extended hand was a lifeline, yet she hesitated, torn between an escape that felt right and the horrifying idea of leaving Jeremy behind, but the shadows shifted, creeping closer. They edged forward with a silent hunger, drawn to her like moths to a flame. She could hear their ragged breaths, feel the heat of their need. A low growl emanated from one figure, a primal sound that sent tremors through her body. "Come with me," the blacksmith urged again, his voice warm but filled with urgency. "They can sense your fear. If you hesitate," the echo of an unearthed panic gripped her. With a sudden jolt of courage, Vanessa stepped forward, eyes darting to the blacksmith. "What will happen to him? What do you want with us?" The words tumbled out, panic cracking her voice. The blacksmith's expression darkened, a fleeting shadow flashing across his face. "You're not safe here. They have plans for your son," he said, glancing at the figures, who were now writhing in anticipation, sharp teeth glistening like ivory knives under the flickering light. "I can help you, but you need to trust me." "Mommy." Jeremy's small voice cut through her thoughts, rising above the chaos like a siren. She looked back, her heart breaking at the sight of him surrounded by the twisted figures. He was terrified, and with indignation, Vanessa knew she couldn't allow this nightmare to swallow him whole. Fear propelled her forward. "Run, Jeremy. Come to me," she called out, her voice fierce like a lioness. The crowd surged, shadows clashing in a frantic movement. The blacksmith's grip remained firm upon her, urging her, but Vanessa's instincts took control, and she darted toward her son. Every scream of warning, every frantic footfall against the dirt, heightened the tension vibrating in the air. As she reached the edge of the circle, the figures lunged. Vanessa grabbed Jeremy, yanking him against her, eyes wild with terror as she shielded him from the grotesque faces that loomed closer. Their laughter was a cold wind, echoing around them. "Stay behind me," she shouted, her heart thumping like a war drum. The blacksmith stepped in front, taking the brunt of the hateful gazes. "They won't touch you if you're with me," he bellowed, but fear twisted her stomach. She could feel the shadows thrumming with rage over her defiance. Their hunger was insatiable. Would the blacksmith truly protect them, or was he a wolf in sheep's clothing? Then it happened. One figure, faster than the rest, lunged forward, a clawed hand shooting through the air, snapping inches from Vanessa's face. She recoiled, pulling Jeremy closer, barely dodging the fury that surged toward them. "Run! Now!" the blacksmith shouted. The clearing lit up with chaos, figures crashing together as the shadows clashed against one another in a frenzy of growls and howls. Time stretched, every second felt like a lifetime. "Follow me!" the blacksmith yelled again, retreating deeper into the woods, desperation now coloring his voice. Without thinking, Vanessa seized Jeremy's hand, and they ran, adrenaline pushing them further into the darkness as shadows reached out, eager to clutch at their escape. Branches tore at her skin as they burst through the underbrush, the wild sounds of pursuit roaring behind them. Night enveloped them, but there was no time to waste in fear or regret. She had Jeremy with her, and they had to get away, but just when she thought they might escape, a bone-chilling scream ripped through the trees. Not from the shadows behind them, but from the very heart of the forest. "Mommy!" Jeremy whispered again, trembling. Had that cry come from someone familiar? What had she unleashed? An unseen horror lurked ahead, ready to seal their fate with a darker intention entirely. As they dashed through the thick foliage, the air grew dense, static electricity swirling, magnifying the sensation of being hunted. Ahead, a faint glow shimmered through the treetops. A glimmer of salvation, or something much worse? Could she trust this vague light that beckoned them? Or would it lead them deeper into a trap? The shadows whispered, and Vanessa felt their breath on her neck. Time was slipping away. The light glimmered ahead, flickering like a dying star, calling to Vanessa with an allure she couldn't deny. Each step felt like it pulled her deeper into a web of uncertainty. The shadows behind them were relentless and indistinguishable mass, howling with a hunger that resonated through the trees. She clutched Jeremy's hand tighter, pulling the terrified boy along as they raced toward the faint glow. "Mommy, what's that?" Jeremy's voice trembled, barely above a whisper. Vanessa's heart constricted. She couldn't afford to stop, not now. "I don't know, but we have to keep moving," she said, forcing her voice to sound more confident than she felt. The blacksmith trailed behind them, his presence a solid wall against the chaos that chased them. "Faster. We're almost there," he barked, glancing over his shoulder, fear etched on his face. The figures had slowed but were still poised, watching, anticipating the next move. Yet the glow was more than just light. As they drew closer, Vanessa realized it emanated from an old cabin, its windows warped with the peeling paint of memories long faded. What would they find inside? Were they walking toward safety or doom? "Mommy, I'm scared." Jeremy squeezed her hand, his small body shaking. Her heart ached for him. "I am too, baby. But we need to stick together. We can't let them get us," she replied, forcing warmth into her tone, even as dread gnawed at her insides. Just then, she heard a soft thud, the kind that seems to echo in the stillness before an explosion. The blacksmith's eyes widened, and without a word, he picked up the pace, glancing cautiously over his shoulder again. Vanessa caught the edge of worry spreading across his features, a dark shadow cast against a promise of safety. They reached the cabin, but the door hung slightly ajar, as if inviting them into its shadowy depths. The blacksmith moved in first, drawing a dagger from beneath his coat. "Stay close," he commanded, urgency sharpening his tone. "Go inside," he urged, ushering Vanessa and Jeremy through the threshold. It felt wrong. The cabin creaked under their weight, like it was alive, holding its breath, waiting. Inside, the musty air washed over them like cold water. The dim light flickered again, casting monstrous shadows against the walls, which seemed to sway. Vanessa glanced around. A lone table sat in the center, bone-white and splattered with dark stains. Old, cobwebbed furniture loomed, and grime clung thickly to the windows. It felt like a mausoleum, whispering secrets of those who had come before. "Mommy," Jeremy whispered again, eyes wide. "What if they find us here?" The blacksmith stepped to the door, glancing back. "They won't find us if we're quiet. We need to wait for the right moment to leave." His voice faltered, the tension in the air thickening. A disconcerting scratching sound came from outside. It clawed at the door, mixed with low murmurs that sent chills racing down Vanessa's spine. She pressed a finger to her lips, urging Jeremy to silence as the blacksmith's eyes turned alert. Shadows shifted just outside, twisted forms hovering near, their claws scraping against the wood, demanding entry. "Damn it," he hissed, leaning against the door to brace against the pressure. With every tense heartbeat, the cabin seemed to come alive, the air electrified as Vanessa fought the urge to scream. They were trapped, caught between the whispers of the shadows outside and the darkness that enveloped the cabin. Then the low growls morphed into guttural laughter. "Mommy, they're playing." Jeremy's innocence cut through the tension. Vanessa's heart sank. Those weren't games. They were marking their territory, waiting for the moment before the kill. The laughter twisted, growing sinister, echoing through the hollowed woods. The blacksmith's grip tightened around the handle, his expression hardening. "We can't stay here much longer." If they get in, his words trailed off, and an understanding passed between them. There was something far worse than simple capture waiting behind those walls. Suddenly, the letter F from the cabin's faded sign broke free, swinging wildly as a gust of wind stirred the trees. It snapped, startling Vanessa and Jeremy, splintering off into the foliage. Was that merely the wind, or had it been more? Are they really hunted? Vanessa found herself thinking as when she caught a glimpse of her reflection in a cracked mirror. the woman looking back seemed damaged, determined yet terrified, a mere shell holding on by a thread. Just then, the blacksmith cursed under his breath. "We need to get out of here." Before she could process it, he yanked the door open and stepped outside. The light flickered again, igniting in her chest a hope that felt dangerously naive. But the darkness beyond buzzed, twisted figures writhing as they advanced. Just as the blacksmith attempted to retreat, a thin, sharp scream echoed in the distance. "Jeremy!" she shrieked, spine tingling. The very heart of the forest seemed to pulse with something predatory. Would they face whatever chased them head-on or find another escape in this cursed place? The shadows lurked ever closer, and time seemed to fold as Vanessa's heart raced. The next choice could seal their fate for better or worse. "Mommy!" Jeremy's eyes widened as he caught sight of something approaching. What was coming for them now? And would they finally be caught in its terrifying snare? The air outside thickened, coiling around Vanessa like a vice as she hesitated at the threshold, the sinister shadows writhing hungrily just a few feet away. The blacksmith's fierce gaze was fixed on the forest, his dagger gleaming in the faint light as if it were the only barrier between them and the encroaching terror. "Close the door," he barked, urgency twisting his voice. Vanessa grabbed Jeremy's shoulder, pulling him back through the cabin, the door slamming shut behind them with a booming finality. They stood in the dark, the shadows beyond whispering unsettlingly, taunting them. Laughter echoed again, a low rumble like thunder but warped, twisted, as if the very trees chuckled at their plight. The cabin seemed to breathe with them, each creak of the wood a reminder of their vulnerability. Vanessa scanned the cramped space, the flickering light cast grotesque shapes that danced on the walls. "What do we do?" Her voice trembled, barely more than a whisper. "Should," the blacksmith warned, pressing himself against the door, his muscles straining under the pressure. "Listen, can you hear them?" Vanessa strained her ears, heart pounding in sync with the thrumming chaos outside. The growls mixed with those unsettling giggles, sending icy fear coursing through her veins. "They're coming for us." The words slipped from her lips, an acceptance of their terrifying reality. As seconds ticked by, the noises amplified, shifting from ghostly laughter to violent scratching. The reality of the situation clawed at her. The creatures outside weren't just toying with them, they were hunting. "What are they?" Jeremy pleaded, his small voice breaking her composure. They're just shadows." Vanessa's words felt hollow as she tried to convince them both of their safety. But the shadows felt anything but benign. "We have to find something to defend ourselves," she implored, not daring to take her eyes from the door. "Here." The blacksmith rummaged through a nearby drawer, pulling out a rusted meat cleaver. It felt heavy in Vanessa's trembling hands, a small comfort against the impending dread. "It's better than nothing," he muttered, shifting his stance. Suddenly the shadows thudded against the cabin, restless, two distinct forms visible through the cracked windows, pale, elongated limbs twisted inhumanly. The laughter had become mocking, as if they were already won, their victory assured, only waiting for the right moment to strike. "Mommy, don't let them get me." Jeremy's voice cracked, tears sparkling in his eyes. "I won tea, I promise." Vanessa managed, fear clawing at her throat. But deep down, anxiety swirled, taunting her with images of losing what mattered most. Just then, the wind howled outside, carrying with it a horrific moan that cut through the laughter. It felt alive, filled with a malevolence that sent a shiver down her spine. They were in a nightmare of their own making. The cabin creaked ominously, almost as if it was reacting to the torment outside. Was it protecting them, or was it part of the trap? The door shuddered violently, invasive fists pounding against the wood as if the shadows sought to break free. "Stand back!" the blacksmith shouted. He threw his weight against the door, but it splintered under the pressure. A crack formed, spilling an eerie dim light that twisted the shaky figures outside into monstrous forms. "It's too weak," Vanessa gasped, dropping the cleaver as her hands flew to her head. The helplessness crashed over her like a wave. "What do we do?" "Get to the back." The blacksmith shouted, urgency twisting through his words. We can still find a way out. Vanessa steered Jeremy toward the rear of the cabin, each step pulling them closer to the unknown. The shadows outside surged, angry howls rising to penetrate the air. Instinctively, she glanced back, dread pooling in her stomach, but when she saw an opening among the side walls, a gap wide enough for an escape. Hope flickered inside her momentarily, igniting her resolve. There. She pointed. We can escape that way. Go. The blacksmith urged, eyes set fiercely on the door as the wood began to splinter further, but just as she turned and reached for the side wall, the shadows began to slink deeper into the cabin, long fingers stretching toward them like wicked tendrils, sinuous and serpentine. The cabin seemed to shriek, the howls intensifying, the monstrous features shifting closer, ready to consume everything in its wake. Run! Vanessa screamed as she pushed Jeremy through the narrow opening. But would she be close behind? Would the shadows let them slip away, or would they ensnare her within their darkness? As Vanessa squeezed through the gap, she saw the look of panic spread across Jeremy's face. What awaited them outside? A monstrous darkness ready to claim its victims, or a glimmer of hope leading them away from this nightmare? With shadows looming ever nearer, time was not on their side. Vanessa burst through the gap, the chill of the outside air biting into her skin. The transition was abrupt, cold dread replacing the stifling warmth of the cabin. She stumbled into a world cloaked in an ominous gloom, an eeriness that made her feel exposed and hunted. Jeremy! She shouted, her voice cracking as she turned, searching frantically. The shadows coiled behind her like a living entity, clawing at her heels. She felt the weight of darkness pressing close, whispering promises of despair. Over here. Jeremy's voice pierced the air, small and tremorous, urging her toward a cluster of gnarled trees ahead. The sight was both a respite and a trepidation. Would those twisted trunks offer them shelter, or become another trap? She dashed toward him, every heartbeat thundering in her ears, drowning out the relentless howling that rippled through the forest. Shadows flitted between the trees, bending and twisting with a life of their own, while sickening giggles taunted her, echoing through the stillness. What were they? Were they just figments of her nightmarish imagination, or did they flesh out some terrifying reality? Quick! Jeremy yanked at her arm in desperation, pulling her under the protective embrace of a thick tree. They tucked themselves into the shadows, hearts racing, bodies trembling. Vanessa held her breath, listening for the sound of pursuit, but the laughter faded into a silence that somehow felt more sinister. With each shallow inhale, dread wrapped tighter around her chest. Images of the cabin's door splintering raced through her mind, the certainty of something monstrous slipping inside, darkening every corner they once thought safe. Do you think they're gone? Jeremy whispered, his voice barely audible, a frail echo in the suffocating atmosphere. Her instinct screamed no. I don't know. She swallowed hard, forcing herself to look. In the distance, she spotted something moving in unnatural gliding, darting between tree trunks. The creatures they had just escaped now roamed freely, their eyes glowing like coals against the night. She hadn't just seen shadows, she had seen the remnants of something ancient, feral. This part of the forest wasn't just haunted, it was alive with predatory terror, and those shadows were hunters. Suddenly, the rustling nearby interrupted her thoughts. A figure materialized, barely discernible against the trunk of a tree. It was a man, or at least he once was, but something primal lurked behind his eyes, his features distorted and shrouded in darkness. His limbs were too long, his movements too fluid, as if the fabric of his being danced to the discordant rhythm of the woodland night. Mommy, Jeremy whimpered, inching closer to Vanessa, gripping her arm. The raw fear in his voice shattered her resolve, and she instinctively stepped in front of him. Stay behind me, she commanded as she felt the meat cleaver cool against her palm, an absurd lifeline in this nightmare. The man smiled a twisted kind of welcome, the sharpness of his teeth glinting in the pale moonlight. He stepped closer, and as he did, the shadows seemed to writhe, echoing his movements. "Join us," he whispered, his voice a slithering hiss that wrapped around her brain. Vanessa's heart raced. Somehow, he knew their fear. "Run!" She screamed again, a primal instinct bursting forth, as she yanked Jeremy past the man, sprinting deeper into the woods. The trees spun on either side, blurring their pathway. Panic rose as the shadows began darting after them, elongated forms twisting and stretching in a cruel mimicry of their flight, laughter mingling with the night air, a cacophony of derision aimed at her fleeting hope. "Keep going," she urged Jeremy, terror propelling them forward. The forest thickened, and visibility shrank, but they didn't stop. Yet, even as they fled, questions gnawed at her. Where were they going? What awaited them deeper in this dark labyrinth? In the frantic rush, Vanessa felt the ground shift beneath her feet, roots snaking like fingers as she stumbled. They were not merely fugitives, they were prey in a world that craved them. How long before the shadows caught up? How long before they succumbed to the feral nightmares weaving through the trees? Then, from the depths of the thicket, an eerie glow pierced the darkness, illuminating a path just ahead. Was it a chance at salvation, or another facade designed to lure them further into the nightmare? Her breath caught as she hesitated. A decision lay before her. What would she risk next, and would the very shadows that chased them make the choice for her? The glow pulsed, a beckoning heartbeat in the blackness. It flickered like a candle, steadying Vanessa's racing heart only momentarily before the shadow's mocking laughter thundered back into her ears. She glanced behind, the tall, spectre-like figures receding like bad dreams, but she didn't trust the silence. It felt deceptive. "Do we go towards it?" Jeremy's voice cracked, filled with dread. Vanessa hesitated, gazing into the flickering haze. I don't know. "We can't stay here," she murmured, fingers tightening around the cleaver. The glow was a balm against the overwhelming dread threatening to swallow them whole. If it was a trap, it was one they could neither afford to ignore nor escape from. Summoning her courage, she nodded towards the light. "We need to find out. Stay close." With each step, the trees around them transformed, ancient trunks now draped with glimmering moss, their bark sparkling under the glow like stars. The world felt distorted. It was awe-inspiring yet terrifying. Every rustle of leaves sent a shiver down her spine as the laughter faded into quiet whispers, conspiratorial and sinister. As they crept closer, the light revealed an odd scene. A dilapidated clearing opened up, littered with childlike drawings etched onto wooden planks standing like grave markers. Pictograms of twisted trees, eerie faces, and sharp-toothed grins stared back at her, punctuated by a single chilling phrase, "Hide and seek." "Vanessa," Jeremy whispered, his eyes wide, reflecting the fright wrapping tighter around them. "This feels wrong." It was wrong. Everything reeked of decay, deeply unsettling, as if they had crossed into a twilight realm where nightmares festered. She could feel the shadows lingering at the edges of the clearing, watching with perverse curiosity as unearthly forms danced around the perimeter. Suddenly, a child's giggle rang out from behind a fallen log, high-pitched and playful. Vanessa's heart lurched. "Jeremy," she started, but he was already sliding forward, drawn by the haunting innocence of that laugh. "Wait." She grabbed his arm, panic sharpening her instincts. "Don't. We need to be quiet." But it was too late. The brightness flickered again, illuminating a figure cloaked in tattered white fabric with a hood obscuring its face. The child stepped forward, revealing countless others, terrifying apparitions with hollow eyes and jagged teeth, their grins impossibly wide. "Play with us," the child beckoned, its voice echoing eerily in the hollow quiet. "We just want to play a game." The shadows behind Vanessa shifted, slithering closer as the children danced around her, their movements synced with the unnatural rhythm of the trees. Their laughter echoed, swirling into a dissonant symphony, mockery and allure intertwined, cold tendrils wrapping around her mind. "No, no." Vanessa shook her head, forcing her feet to back away. But the children merely giggled, their bodies bending in impossibly grotesque angles, inching closer. Without a choice, Vanessa's instincts kicked in again. She gripped Jeremy's hand tight, yanking him backward. "Run," she bellowed, but the bright light turned blinding. They stumbled into the darkness once more, blindly navigating the maze of trees. The laughter from behind grew louder, a cacophony that echoed back and forth across the clearing, mingling with the whispers of the shadows. Every step echoed with dread. Were the shadows the hunters or the hunted? Vanessa's lungs burned with exertion. Just when she thought they might find an escape, the forest twisted itself further, roots snaking and clawing at their legs as if the very ground wanted to keep them trapped. "Mommy, I can't keep running," Jeremy cried, breathless and terrified. "Just a little more, please," she shouted, desperately fighting against the suffocation closing around them. The shadows followed like hungry phantoms, each moment stretching into an eternity. The eerie glow faded behind them as darkness engulfed the path forward. Thousands of trees loomed like giants, and whispers grew frantic, their intentions unclear, a warning or a taunt. Then they stumbled upon something inexplicable. A wooden sign buried in the ground, painted letters cracked and peeling. "Welcome back to your nightmares. We've been waiting." Vanessa froze, dread washing over her. The children, the shadows, they knew her name. As she stared into the abyss ahead, deeper into the forest where no light dared flicker, something cold and wet dropped down her back. She didn't need to look up, she already felt the weight of eyes watching, waiting. Vanessa. Jeremy's whisper trembled. What do we do now? Would they keep running into the heart of darkness, or was there another choice, one that could lead to safety or deeper madness? The shadows encircled them, closing in, their intent unveiling itself slowly. And she had to wonder, could they survive the truth that lurked within? The shadows thickened, pulsating with a life of their own. Vanessa felt a cold sweat dribble down her back. Thoughts raced through her mind. Had they really come to this cursed place? Was there any escape for them, or were they already trapped in a game they couldn't comprehend? "Turn back," Jeremy whimpered, eyes wide with terror. She wanted to tell him it would be okay, that they could find a way out. But those words stuck in her throat, tangled among the sharp wires of fear. "Listen," she whispered, her breath hitching. Tiny feet scampered closer, circling them. The laughter had turned oddly distorted, echoing off the trees like a devilish chant. "We need to keep moving. It can't be far, we have to find a way out." But as they stumbled forward, the ground felt alive beneath them. Roots writhed like snakes, looking to trip them, weaving through their soles, holding them in place. Panic clawed at her throat, the weight of the forest pressing in all around. From the edge of her vision, she caught sight of movement. Hunched figures, grotesque in their disfigured forms, followed the children. Faces twisted in unnatural grins, eyes glowing with a predatory hunger. They whispered words in a tongue she didn't understand, yet somehow grasped the malice behind them. "Play nice," a voice taunted, deep and guttural. It seemed to seep from the very trees, echoing around the clearing, mocking her, reminding her of the very thing she feared. "Run!" Vanessa screamed again, tearing Jeremy along with her as they lurched, stumbling into darkness that swallowed every ounce of hope. They tore through the forest, branches clawing at them, the laughter and whispers drawing closer. Vanessa's heart raced as she gripped the cleaver desperately, its handle slick and sweaty in her palms. Human or creature, the line blurred with each footstep. Would she be forced to fight if they cornered her? A hoarse shout sliced through the air, freezing her in place. "Over here. This way." The voice sounded familiar. It could be a trick, she thought, but with the cacophony of chaos behind them, it risked nothing to follow. She and Jeremy plunged into the overgrowth, guided only by instinct and a fragile thread of hope. Each frenzied heartbeat echoed in her ears as they shoved through bramble and thorn, the shadows clawing behind. The twisted trees seemed to murmur secrets, words hanging heavy in the night, just out of reach. "Mommy, please, I can't breathe," Jeremy gasped, his tiny body shivering against her. "Just a little longer. Hold on," Vanessa urged, trying to infuse strength into her words. They stumbled into a small clearing, illuminated by the flickering remnants of the eerie glow that pulled them here in the first place, but to her horror, as the light surrounded them, the figures were their children and shadows alike. Staring, grinning, teeth jagged and glinting like shards of broken glass. The air thickened with a sense of dread not just familiar but waiting for them. "Welcome back." The children chorused in unison, their voices blending into a discordant melody. "You found us again." Vanessa felt the cold fingers of despair clutch at her chest. They had returned to that cursed spot, the forest shifting around them, sealing their fate. "And the game continues," came the deep voice again from within the crowd of children who were no longer just children. They morphed into something far more sinister, twisted forms coated in the guise of innocence. Breathless excitement mixed with panic in the air. Hide and seek they sang, grinning wider as they began to close in, the world spun around Vanessa. The shadows merged into a formless mass, looming ever closer. Jeremy's hand slipped from hers. "No!" she shrieked, lunging forward only to feel a hand grasp her wrist cold and strong. "Play with us," it whispered, eyes glinting with malice. Desperation washed over her, the haunting reminder of her own name echoing in the twisted breeze. She had to make a choice: fight or flee. There was no room for hesitation, but then the glimmer above, a flicker of hope danced in the haze. Was it a doorway, or a trap? And the truth of her existence, what did it mean in a world where nightmares walked freely, where her very essence was up for grabs? The children's laughter swelled, a chilling promise as Vanessa began to realize that perhaps, escaping was not the answer after all. Could they confront the truth within the darkness, or would they become part of the horror that thrived in these woods? In that very moment, the shadows descended, and the game began anew. The grip on her wrist tightened, cold fingers clamping down like a vice. Vanessa turned, the shadows swirling, revealing the grotesque face of a child who wasn't quite a child anymore. Its eyes glowed with malevolence, a smirk stretching its thin lips as deep as the woods themselves. "Join us," the shadow child crooned, its voice oozing sweet predation. Around her, other shadowy figures laughed, circling tighter. Laughter echoed off the trees, sinister and haunting, each chuckle a reminder of their insatiable hunger. Vanessa stumbled back, dread settling like a stone in her gut. "Jeremy!" she shouted, desperation clawing at her voice. She turned, scanning the darkness for her son, her heart racing, each thump pulsing with the urgency to find him. But the clearing was filled with writhing shadows, every semblance of light twisted into grotesque forms. "Mommy!" The sound was a distant wail, swallowed by the eerie atmosphere. Vanessa felt her chest tighten, a storm of fear and resolve washing over her. She fought to anchor herself against the encroaching tide of panic. "Stay away from him!" she shouted, brandishing the cleaver, its edge glinting tenuously in the unnatural light. The children shrieked in unison, derisively echoing her words, growing bolder as they smelled the scent of her fear. "Playtime isn't over," came the deep voice from the shadows, still and gravelly like the very roots of the earth. "You've just begun." An overwhelming urge to flee surged through her. Without thinking, she charged at the nearest shadow, swinging the cleaver in a sweeping arc. It sliced through the air but met nothing, only laughter, suffocating her resolve. They bounded back effortlessly, too quick, too strong, their faces gleeful and mocking. Vanessa turned sharply, eyes wild, searching for a way out, the shadows still closing in. She caught a glimpse of movement: Jeremy, just feet away, entangled in the grotesque hands of another pair of nightmarish children. Panic erupted in her, severing the last remnants of composure she clung to. "Jeremy!" she screamed, reaching for him, but the roots constricted her legs, coiling around her ankles like grasping serpents. She jerked, trying to break free. Her breath came quick and shallow, each beat of her heart a drum signaling her demise. "Join the game," the children chanted, their voices blending into a discordant harmony. With every repetition, the darkness around Vanessa deepened, weighing her down, rooting her in place where she could feel their eyes, Hungry and expectant, finally, mustering every ounce of strength, she tore herself free from the entangling roots, launching herself toward Jeremy. But the closer she got, the deeper he sank into their malicious embrace, their fingers sinking into his flesh like weeds in the earth. "Let him go!" Vanessa shouted, raising the cleaver high, ready to strike. But just then, Jeremy's eyes met hers, wide and pleading. The sight twisted her heart, sending a jolt of hope and despair coursing through her veins. "Mommy, I'm scared," he sobbed, his voice breaking through the madness, and the world went silent for just a heartbeat. The children paused, a collective inhale, their smiles faltering momentarily at the pure innocence that stood before them. "Mommy," the word hung in the air like a fragile bubble, threatening to shatter. It was enough of a distraction for Vanessa to push through the shadows. "Grab my hand," she cried, inching closer, desperate enough to risk everything. But shadows rushed in to pull him back, and just as his outstretched fingers grazed hers, shrieks erupted. The woods vibrated with their hunger as they all lunged toward her, their laughter returning, fiercer this time, an avalanche of malice barreling down, just at the precipice of being engulfed. A shimmering light flickered in the distance. Was this their salvation? Or merely another snare? "Run!" Vanessa screamed, pulling Jeremy toward the flickering glimmer, but the shadows chased mercilessly behind, each violent tug threatening to rip them apart. With a final push, she dove into the light. The shadows wailed and surged, closing in like a swarm of locusts. Would they escape the nightmarish grasp, or would they vanish into the darkness forever? As the shadows convulsed and intertwined, she knew one thing: the real game had just begun. Light burst around them, enveloping Vanessa and Jeremy in a warmth that felt like a heartbeat, a pulse of safety in the midst of relentless terror. Vanessa squeezed Jeremy's hand tight, feeling his small fingers tremble in response to the tumultuous shadows lurking in the periphery. The unseen weight of anguish pulled at them from behind, but the beckoning glow ahead felt alive, inviting them deeper into a new reality. They stumbled forward, the landscape morphing around them. Gone were the twisted trunks of foreboding trees. Instead, a field of vibrant wildflowers swayed softly in the breeze, their colors radiant against the oppressive darkness they just fled. The air was thick with the lush scent of blooming flora, shivering with life, a stark contrast to the suffocating dread that had encapsulated them moments before. Had they crossed into a brighter realm, or was it merely a momentary reprieve? "Mommy, where are we?" Jeremy's voice was timid, yet his gaze sparkled with a flicker of hope. I don't know, sweetheart," she murmured, heart pounding in her chest. The darkness, though briefly diminished, still lurked at the edges of her mind. "But this feels better." As they stepped further into the flower-strewn expanse, soft giggles floated on the breeze, ethereal and merry, creating a siren song that made Vanessa's heart skip. Her instincts urged caution, but her weary spirit craved relief. Behind them, the shadows throbbed with frustration, a tangible anger that shimmered but could not penetrate this newfound serenity. "Look!" Jeremy pointed ahead, excitement spilling forth despite the lingering tension. There, in the distance, stood a wooden archway, decorated with twisting vines and blossoms, the entrance to a path that seemed to pulse with gentle glimmers of light. They hurried toward it, buoyed by the thrill of escape from the nightmare that hung ominously behind them. Vanessa felt an unfamiliar mix of freedom and dread. As they walked on, whispers followed, though now they were softer, almost pleading shadows desperate to reclaim what had slipped from their grasp. "Mommy, what if they come back?" Jeremy's voice trembled. She stopped, turning to meet his anxious gaze. "They'll have to find their way through this light first," she reassured, yet uncertainty gnawed at her heart. "And we won't stop running. Not now." They reached the archway and paused, shadows fluttering like moths just out of sight. But as Vanessa stepped through, a warm glow enveloped them, washing away the last remnants of fear. Once past the threshold, the landscape transformed. Winding paths through golden fields beckoned, leading to a distant horizon glistening under a clear blue sky. Unfamiliar yet inviting, it felt like a promise, a life waiting to be reclaimed. Can we catch fireflies? Jeremy brightened, his spirit ignited by the beauty around him. Of course. We can do anything, as long as we're together, she said, feeling the weight lift off her shoulders, an exhilarating taste of freedom flooding her veins. No shadows could pull them back now, this place was theirs, unmarred by the darkness of past horrors. But as they walked hand in hand down the sunlit path, Vanessa couldn't shake the distant echoes of sinister laughter that faded like a haunting melody. The memories of their pursuit lingered like shadows just out of sight, a reminder of what they had narrowly escaped. Mommy Jeremy's voice broke the spell, pulling her back. What if the shadows find us here? Vanessa's heart clenched. We'll be ready if they do, she said, resolve igniting within her. You know why? Because your laughter is stronger than any darkness. As she glanced down at her son, the light reflecting in his wide eyes sparked something anew, a promise of resilience, a bond unbroken. Together, they paused, and for a moment, silence enveloped them, the beauty around them standing in defiance against the nightmares that dwelled beyond. Let us find those fireflies, she declared, a grin breaking through the tension, her heart lifting. With newfound determination, they strolled further into the golden landscape, laughter replacing the haunting shadows, filling the void with warmth and hope. They would cherish every moment, searching for fireflies in this new world, ready to confront whatever may come next. Together, they were unbreakable, and somewhere far behind, in the darkness, the feral shadows twisted in frustration, the echoes of their laughter gradually swallowed by the sunlight, a reminder of a game played and lost. And as Vanessa and Jeremy embraced their freedom, they made a silent vow, they would never allow fear to return. And with that, they stepped into the bright tomorrow, leaving an entire world of terror behind them. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm, and remember, every click counts. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. I want to hear from you. And for the true fans out there, this is the moment to show your support. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share.